I'm Shelby, and this is Filmish Chats. Welcome to another episode of Filmish Chats. I'm Shelby Cook, head curator and editor-in-chief at Film East. Today, I'm joined by my fellow team members, Will Schofield and Ishnoor, to discuss the 2024 Persian film, My Favorite Cake. Set in Tehran, the film tells the story of a woman who decides to live out her desires in a country where women's rights are heavily restricted. And this episode is, of course, part of Film East Online, a space for free online content in varying media to educate, inform, and inspire all things cinema. Film East is a multi-award-winning global film organization based in the east of England and the east coast of the United States. This episode is led by Ishnoor, who has a specialty in Iranian cinema, so sit back and enjoy our discussion of My Favorite Cake.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode of Film East, where we're going to discuss the film My Favorite Cake by Maryam Moghadam and Behtash Sanaeeha. And our favorite question is that, what are your thoughts on the film?
It was a slow story, but not in a bad way. I think it was very interesting because I think it obviously told a love story from the perspective of an older woman and an older man. So that was very unconventional in that it was telling these sort of beat by beat sort of love story through the perspective of, someone who's, I guess they were like in their 70s or something, who are older in life. We don't really see that very much. I think we're seeing that more than we would have in the past. I also thought some of the political moments of it were interesting. I'm glad it wasn't. I read a Letterboxd review that was like hated this film because it wasn't political enough. And I think the Letterboxd review said, it was really pandering to a Western audience because it reminds you that the morality police are there, but it didn't say anything about it. But the whole time I was watching this and I was thinking of Taxi Tehran. And it has that same sort of, it talks about the politics without the politics being the main center of the story. And I think that's really effective because it's not beating you over the head with, this is why you should care. This is why you should be against these politics or whatever. It's still giving you a perspective of this world that they live in and like the reality of it. Like, a young girl's walking, she doesn't have her hijab on correctly, and the morality police are going to come after her, So it's the reality of what it is to live like that. And, don't play your music too loud because we don't want the morality police to come and see that there's a man in my house, that type of thing. So I thought it was, I don't necessarily agree with that Letterboxd review, but I found that it was very effective in the storytelling and positioning it of where this film takes place.
Yeah, I find that review to be fairly harsh, particularly considering the consequences of the film and the additional context that I'm sure we'll go into later. Don't want to jump the gun. But yeah, I found it to be a really interesting. I thought a lot about Patterson throughout in terms of it being a very kind of quiet, slow burn, subdued, most of it being just kind of quiet chit chat in a kitchen, basically. But whereas Patterson is kind of something of a melancholic film with a more optimistic ending, this is the exact opposite. It is a kind of slow but pleasant ride until the very end when it takes a very dark turn. I mean, I kind of foresaw that happening quite early on when watching, but it didn't dull the impact at all. I found it quite I don't know. It's one of those films that when I was watching it, it just kind of washed over me a bit, and I didn't really think much. But since then, I have really kind of thought about it since, and it has lingered, definitely. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting watch.
I Yeah, so I watched this film last year in London, and a very interesting thing happened while watching. So I could see that some of the people started leaving the theater
Oh.
when the last scene was about to come. So a lot of people watched the happy moments and then they started leaving. And I got a bit angry because I'm like, how dare you? Like, why are you leaving this film? Because after a very long time, I was sitting in the theater watching a film where I was smiling, I was laughing, and it was not a controlled smile or a controlled laughter. Like my heart was in the film. And when people left and when the last scene happened, I was like, oh, that's why. Because the sadness of it is too much because I sat in the theater and I cried. I usually don't cry much
Hmm.
during the film along with other people, but it's like I can't stop my tears. So I laughed a lot and I cried a lot. So it had a lot of impact on me. And um, I I I want to go to another point about this film regarding the letterbox review as well. Like I found this film because I watch a lot of Iranian cinema. I found this film a very refreshing
Hmm.
romantic film coming from Iran. There
Yeah.
was humor, there was this childlike innocence which is going on. There is this uncertainty of love. There is these women sitting on that table eating and talking about their diseases, and they're talking about how important a partner is. All of this is going on, but there are also moments of morality police going on. It's not very intense. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm glad that you brought up that the dinner scene with all the ladies. Because I found that scene very endearing. And I agree with you. That was, interesting when you think of Iranian cinema. All those women were sitting around and talking pretty raunchy, about, like, oh, oh, this is my boyfriend, I only chat with him on the phone, whereas I picked up this guy on the street, whatever. And it was like, very interesting to like y- y- get that perspective of these older women's experience, as women and like as still
Yeah.
sexual beings, where a lot of the times when you see older people, you're like, oh, they're not sexual, you don't want to think about that. But that is really how like, these older groups of people, I mean, I think about my bosses and they always have dinner parties and that's, I'm sure what they talk about at their dinner parties, they still are people, they're not just,
Yeah.
old people who sit around and do nothing. I really enjoyed that scene and how easily the conversation flowed and like going from talking about men to talking about their ailments and oh, I'm dying and that's what it was a very human conversation. It was very interesting and I really loved the sequences of her going out into the world and just like looking for men. And she's just like, she goes to that park and the street cleaner, she's just like, where are all the men? Like, where are the people that work out here? They're like, they come in the morning. She's like, I don't wake up until 11 o'clock. It was very funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also like the fact that like this film also captures the intimate moments of an everyday life, and there is quite resilience and there is a quite rebellion in it. And then I also feel like there is life along with resistance.
Mm,
Like if we look at the Iranian political movements, the slogan says "Zan Zindagi Azadi," which translates to women life freedom, says that the women's freedom has to be a part of the bigger freedom. You can't just be free and then give rights to women. The
mm,
women have to be free, so it really ties into that aspect of it. I also like the fact that how she wakes up late in the evening, late in the afternoon, how she is painting her nails, how she's putting on that makeup, and how she is going out and looking for a companion, and her earnest efforts. She's going to that cafe, she is going to the park, as you said, and then she is going to that the bread scene where she's going because she's really thinking of a companion. So I feel like the fact that there is this like a good delicate balance between the resistance and this sort of intimate, I would call it like living the way she wants to live in the circumstances that she has. I think that film portrays that quite nicely as well.
Hmm.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think that one thing it does particularly well in kind of coming on from that is um almost doing both at the same time. There's that one scene where it's the
Yeah.
men in the diner having a conversation and they're just chit-chatting and they're kind of just having like a pleasant and they're kind of laughing and saying, "Oh, why don't you come eat with us?" But at the same time, the stuff they're talking about is the kind of need for social change. And one of them makes a really good point of like, look, it's all well and good for us to sit here and talk about this. We're old men now. We're not gonna be able to do anything. Our time's passed. We failed. We can only hope that the next generations do something better. And likewise, later in the movie, there's a bit that I really loved where she's kind of she's invited the man over to her house and they're kind of having a nice chit chat, and then the next door neighbor suddenly comes to the front door,
Yeah.
and it's an interaction that we've all had an annoying nosy neighbor or something. They just come and just be like, what's all the noise about? Don't make too much noise, and it's kind of that, and it's an odd little scene, but at the same time, it has a lot of weight behind it because the reality is if this woman does phone in a complaint or something, then this couple are in deep shit,
Yeah.
and it kind of permeates the rest of the film, the knowledge that this woman is next door and at any time she could come, and when they start listening to music and dancing, it kind of created a real tension in my gut because it was like it was a lovely scene, it was beautiful, but there's still the kind of paranoia in the back of the head, which I'm sure is what the reality is like. There's always that sense of
Yeah.
paranoia. And I thought it was incredibly effective at creating that through these little subtle interactions.
And it was really
Yeah. I
interesting.
also,
I found that I was going to mention that too when the neighbor comes, and how easily, like, I think another thing is how easily she was able to lie. And like, she just already knew what her excuse was going to be. Oh, my friend's daughter's birthday. So, you might hear some stuff. And I totally agree with you, Will. I thought when they were dancing, I was like, oh my God, like, this is going to be the
yeah.
conflict. Is it there, something's going to happen? Or even when they were going outside to eat in the garden,
Mm.
it's like, oh my God, like they're just going out there, like, someone could walk in
Yeah.
any minute. And I totally agree with you, Will. I think it was very effective in like reminding you of, like, it grounded you very, very much in this beautiful story while still reminding you of like what the consequences are of the real world that these two people live in.
Yeah. Yeah, so while I was watching the film, like when the neighbor comes and then they go out and they're having wine, I was like, oh my God, are they even serious? And then they have a dialogue, it's like, oh, these neighbors are good. The walls are not towards the other neighbors. These neighbors are good and nothing is visible. So we are all good. So I just find it really interesting that like how they were able to create that space of um freedom or the space of love or the space of being empowered through love within that within a regime or within the country that we hear so many stories of where the films are very intense. They work on symbolism, they work on metaphors. There is taxis and there are hijabs and there are editing techniques, but this film I think is very simple and refreshing from that perspective. And I really like the fact that it was not as intense, and it was also not focused on young protagonists trying to find their way, and it was talking about and later in life romance as well, which is difficult, but how difficult it is in that sort of a restrictive regime. So I think that portrays it really well. And what do you think about the portrayal of their romance? Like, what are your thoughts? Did you resonate with that? And with that, also a question like, uh, how do you also resonate falling in love? Because it became very personal for me at times because I was like, oh, because the kind of things that they shared that, oh, you can come to my home, and Farmaraz says that now is okay and we are going to make wine. This is for loved ones. Like these small things that they add, it just shows like excitement and uncertainty. So I really like that part. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was quite interesting in that I mean, when it first started happening, I thought, how realistic could this be? These two people just suddenly meeting up and suddenly linking up. But then as it went on, the kind of more I thought about it, the more I kind of realized, well, they're both very old people who have been lonely for so long, and they've been in this hostile environment and they've been unable to express that loneliness or that love or that longing. And you don't see much of his life, but you see a lot of hers in her day to day, and you can imagine it being mirrored. And in that environment, it does make total sense that you you'd see someone with the similar spark that you have, the similar want for love and desire and openness to try and friendliness and all this stuff, that that they do instantly kind of click, that it is almost effectively love at first sight. And it yeah, it's interesting how it kind of fostered that environment to make it believable, even though it is a somewhat, I don't know, it's a somewhat unbelievable scenario, and yet you believe it because of the way it's constructed these characters and their interactions, and the way that their conversation kind of starts out where they're both kind of almost testing the waters with one another, just kind of making pleasant chats, but you can feel that underlying tension, and they every once in a while will slip in a little comment about um spending the night or going to a bedroom
Yeah.
or showering together or something. And it's always and there's always a little moment of hesitance before they both break out into a smile. And it's the kind of slow ball rolling, snowballing of this kind of relationship over the course of a night, which is really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective and like sort of my experience dating, there was a lot of moments where I was like very like hesitant, and like my personal like knowledge about, don't ever mention like the future on a date, because then that's going to scare the man away. And when, she said, "Oh, we can make wine together," I was like, "Oh God, he's going to get the ick and he's going to run away from her because she's being too much." And like that, but that was very much jaded by my personal experience. And like, you know, I was like, "Oh God," I was like, don't say anything weird." And like, so I found it there was part of me that found it unbelievable, because I was like, that's never going to happen in real life. Like, that guy's going to be totally weirded out by her because she's just, coming up so strong. Um,
Mm.
but I think at some point I did kind of just like give into the story and just, um, but you do fall in love with the sort of very quick romance, but then also there's a part of you that's like, this isn't, something bad's gonna happen here. Like, this
Yeah.
like something is not, not gonna be
Yeah.
good. And
I
I think
think
it was also really interesting to see, because I got, it's set in the modern day. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know how much dating apps or underground dating is in Iran, but you think about, dating apps is the way that you meet people now. And, you literally see her going out looking for a man. Like, that's like what people tell you to do. Don't want to be on the dating apps. Literally just go. Like, it was just very, I just found it very charming to see. Like, it was very naive, and it was very, almost childlike, because there was this
Yeah.
whimsy to it, where she was just like, I'm going to go out and get a man today. And her man like accepted that. And it was an exciting thing to see.
I think a
Yeah,
key
maybe.
factor in that. Oh, sorry. I think a key factor in that also was probably their age, in the sense
Yes.
that, like, yeah, if they were a young couple and doing this stuff about talking about the future and jumping into everything, would probably be quite a scary thing. But I think, they've both had relationships before. They're both in their 70s. They can talk about the future, because that probably means like next week to them. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot left. And so I think they were probably more likely to take the plunge for that reason, to say, yeah, sure, why not? What do we have to lose,
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I also feel
sorry.
we all need to be as brave as Maheen,
Yeah.
like going out and looking for a man. For me, what happened, like while I was watching the film and these romantic aspects came, it just reminded me of my teenage days when I
Mhm.
would meet boys and then we would click very easily. And then there was like, for example, if I compare my dating experience now to then, like now, if anybody offers to do anything for me, I'll be like, excuse me, I can do it on my own. I don't need your help. But over there, he's fixing the lights, she's
Yeah.
making the cake. So there is just sort of like uh, uh, trust and naivety, and that it is that it is going to last, and this is the truth. While I was watching it, I was like, this is such a beautiful film. Please end it on a happy note. I don't want them to part ways, or I don't want anything bad to happen. I was just holding on to my seat, but it did happen. Um, Also, what do you what do you think about the cake? What do you think it represents? Like when she's making
This,
the cake and doesn't even get to eat it.
yeah, this new possibility, this new life. She's making this, and she made a beautiful cake. She just had all the ingredients there to make this perfect cake with this beautiful icing. Um, and of course, I knew there was something bad coming when she pulled out the cake. She's like, "Oh, come eat cake," and he didn't respond. And I was like, "Oh God!" I was like, "This is it. This is going to be the bad moment." And I this new possibility, this new life that she was building for herself in her head and that they were dreaming of very much gets just completely sidetracked. She has this beautiful cake, this beautiful life in her head, and then real life comes back into play. They're no longer in this perfect cocoon bubble of, this idea of what's going to happen next. Um, I
Yeah.
found it, I don't know if I found it interesting that she, before she buries him, puts the cake in his mouth.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Will, if you have more. I don't have much more to say other than that.
No, I mean, I think that kind of ties into what you were saying in the way that the cake, it was almost a celebration of this new life, this
Yeah.
pact that they'd effectively made together. They talk all night, they have these romantic moments, and in the end, she's like, "All right, we're locked in. I'm gonna make my favorite cake," and then makes it, and then he suddenly drops dead, and she's unable to eat the cake. She's unable to face it, and so she leaves it with him. She puts it in his mouth so that he can enjoy it wherever he is, and then buries it and doesn't eat the rest of it. And that's that contract going away. She leaves it with his memory, I guess. This
Yeah.
potential future represented by the cake is it's gone from her, and it's with him now the in the grave or in the afterlife or wherever. Um, it's kind
Yeah.
of a final goodbye, I
I ha
suppose.
I think I had a very simplistic view of that. I found that the cake sort of did represent celebration and indulgence or finding joy in food, which also ties into like taking care of yourself and doing things and activities for your own pleasure at any age, whatever
Mm.
age you are. And also contrasts with the isolation that she has been facing and that she will be facing. So, cake sort of represents that sweet time that she had with that person. And then with that person, the sweet times end, but life moves on. And maybe she goes out to the park again, and maybe she goes to the cafe again. Who knows?
She's gonna have just a
So that
collection
was
of
like,
dead men in her garden. These men that just
I
keep
have
dying on
these.
her.
Yeah, I also like wanted to share one more thought with regards to their romance. Like generally, like when we look at romance, the later age romances, we see them very like cute, which is cute. This is cute, but the scene where they shower together and they talk about their insecurities and they're wearing their clothes also talks about the sexual desires, which I
Mhm.
don't see much. So I thought that was also a very powerful thing wherein the woman is claiming her agency, she's claiming her sexual desire, and she's going out and she is doing what she thinks is good for her to basically have a companion in her loneliness. So yeah,
I couldn't read the pill package. Was that Viagra that he was taking?
I think so. Yeah,
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 Mm.
that's what I
because
figured
that's
it was,
what.
but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, because I really like the fact that they're like they do shower together, but they're wearing clothes, and
Uh-huh.
that was like because that also talks about like how when you meet somebody for the first time you don't feel as comfortable with them. It's a new thing, but then you also want to do things with them, so it's just like okay, they're wearing clothes and doing stuff. So yeah, that's
I
yeah.
wanted to,
Any
well, I wanted to ask Ishnoor, why do you think people were leaving the screening before it was over? Because they
I
were bored with it,
I
or?
think No, I think people were leaving the screening because I think they had watched the film before,
Oh, okay.
and because the last scene was going to come, and that is the reason because it upsets everybody. So I think most of the people, because I heard some sobs and everything, and
Hmm.
people leaving, and I thought that this was because they were leaving just towards the end. You either
Yeah.
leave a screening after 20 minutes or after like
Yeah.
the halftime. You don't leave it like 10 minutes before the movie is going to end.
Yeah.
So I think because of the last scene, I think that is the reason people were leaving. Just a bit of context. This film would not have been made if the directors had not stored the film in another country because their houses and their computers were raided by the Iranian uh, morality police, and they tried to find the film. They were also stopped from going to Berlin to attend the premiere of the film. But I am very glad they saved the film somewhere else. And that's how we have the film, My Favorite Cake.
They shot it in Iran.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I
I
thought that
believe. Oh,
I
sorry.
just gonna say I thought the actress was really great in that panic scene where she's just walking back and forth and she's like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. And I thought that was very effective, that her performance in that.
Yeah.
I was Googling the film yesterday, and I believe the directors are on trial at the moment for
Yeah.
having made it. Um,
Yeah.
which is
It's a testament to believing and making your art, as it's, I mean, it's not even a political film, and it's just,
mm.
It is
Well,
not. No, but it is a political film in a
yeah,
manner because it is doing everything it is an immoral film if we
yeah.
look at it from the Iranian censorship laws and morality police laws, because the woman and the man are seen together in a house, which is not allowed. They are seen, they're taking pictures together, they're seen showering together, all of these films, because politics and morality and religion are not separate.
Hmm.
So, in a way, it becomes a political film, in my opinion, but it doesn't go against, like, in a very ferocious manner against the government.
Yeah.
But it says that, okay, you do this, but we are going to live our quiet lives, and this is how we're going to live.
Hmm.
and it also shows how wrong that bleeding letterbox review was at the very
Yeah.
beginning. Like, what, you wanted them to go further than this? They could be going to jail for making this. Like,
Yeah.
what more do you want them to do? Like,
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. There's been so
ridiculous.
many letterbox reviews that I've read recently. I'm just like, you are just so wrong. Like, it's
Yeah.
like they're so like sure of themselves that I'm right. And you're just like, no. I'm just like,
No.
I need to be off the internet. It's just like I'm tired of people's opinions.
You should watch some reality TV.
Yeah, really. Watch something easy. Like Severance, my new favorite TV show. And that concludes this episode of Film East Chats. To learn more about Film East and our upcoming events, film criticism publications, and unique activities, visit our website, film-east.com, or follow us on any of our social media at films_east. And make sure you're subscribed to Film East Chats anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube, so you never miss one of our deep dives into film and TV. Again, we're Film East, a global film organization. See you next time.